Alright guys, so it's my first full actual video. Apologize for the camera quality, probably not the best. We'll get that fixed eventually. Gotta start with that little peek check, make sure everything's looking good. At least on the shitty quality camera still look jacked. So what's the topic for the day? Well, I started this video really because I was thinking about just hypertrophy and gaining muscle in general and how people get very confused about the concept in terms of actually changing how their physique looks. I notice people get very overly focused on muscle protein synthesis, right? Which is still critical. It's, the main aspect of how you actually gain muscle tissue. However, when we're looking at this from the perspective of long-term muscle accrual, there are some other limiting factors that simply play a larger role than people give them credit for. And I'll give you an example. One would be joint health and integrity, right? Something people usually take for granted. They either account it with genetics or environment, things they did when they were younger. I messed up my back when I did this deadlift wrong. But a lot of times it's not approaching things from a perspective that's going to let you look at, okay, I want to grow muscle and get stronger, but this limiting factor is going to come up one way or another long term. Let's address it consistently along the road rather than hit it as this big plateau when we're past our beginner phase, right? So, how do we go about parsing this information to make sure that we know what we're doing is correct? Well, first things first, let's look at hypertrophy as a concept and how you go about doing a set for hypertrophy, right? What's a performance standard to make sure that a set is aimed at hypertrophic adaptation versus what are some other adaptations that we want to bring alongside general base hypertrophy that are going to be conducive to long-term muscular growth, not just putting on a few extra pounds and then losing it when you go through that next phase. So, splitting things up, rep ranges. I just saw a post, I believe it was about how you don't need to go lower than 8 reps. You don't need to go higher than 8 reps. And I find that interesting because for a long time we've known that the hypertrophy rep range is 12 to 15, 8 to 15, right? It's above that range generally. And while, a lot of it is just to get clout and clickbait, there's some merit to saying that if your goal is really just muscle protein synthesis, you don't need to go above 8 reps. You just need to get good tension, minimize fatigue, maximize that expression of that muscle protein synthesis, and rinse and repeat. However, we already see a few pitfalls with this mentality. We already know that sets of 8 and below put a lot higher stress on the joint by nature of just being higher loads. If you're doing an 8 rep max, the weight's going to be heavier than if it was a 15 rep max, accounting for the exact same rep technique, the exact same tempo, everything else. It's heavier load. More torque on the overall joint structure, not that complicated. What are some benefits to maybe bumping that rep range up? Well, one, yes, you're going to see less of overall load through that joint, and while that argument may be made to say that it's going to make the joint weaker because it's being less exposed, you actually get a bit of benefit to the capillary production aspect and a blood flow benefit that happens with higher rep ranges. So for somebody that naturally has elbow issues and you see this post that says you don't need anything above 8 reps. Well, maybe if you have elbow issues, sets of 15 to 20 with, cable pushdowns are going to generate a lot of blood flow in that area. And if you still get close to your reps in reserve target for near failure, you still get your hypertrophic stimulus. But now you also get the benefit of building new blood vessels in that area. And if that joint lacks a lot of that support, that's going to help you long term, maybe even start approaching sets of 8 or less, something you couldn't have if you had only done those sets of 8 or less. So that's about it for the video. I just wanted to change people's kind of general perspective about what it is we need in the long term in regards to programming for hypertrophy, as opposed to just making everything and every single set about maximizing the stimulus and minimizing fatigue. there's more to it, right? I always look at it more like a web and less like a chain. Multiple pieces pulling in different directions. You need a proper amount of tension in all directions to suspend that web. It's not just this A, B, C, D. If I do this, I get muscle growth. Okay? Let me know if you guys got any questions, and I'll see you in the next one.